Deadpool and Wolverine is now the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. I have to ask though, does it deserve to be?
Sure. I don't know. Why not?
It's arguably the movie of the year. Even if Inside Out 2 has made more money, I've seen far more people talk about this one, for better and for worse. In fact, this might be the biggest movie in some time to have the most mixed reception, and I totally get it. Deadpool and Wolverine is kind of a strange movie in the sense that it's more of an event rather than a film, to me at least. I understand this is not going to help the whole theme park ride comparison, but the way I see it, movies like Avengers Endgame, No Way Home, and Deadpool and Wolverine are more so made for the amusement of fans rather than to be seen as fine art. It's an odd way to go about making movies, to say the least. To kind of bring back the theme park comparison, this movie to me is kind of like going to Disneyland. I have a lot of fun engaging with characters and universes I care about for sure, and I had that same experience with this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, but is that enough for it to be a good movie? I would argue no, it's not. The 2003 Catwoman movie is another film I have a lot of fun watching, but it is far from what I and many others would consider good. To be clear though, I don't see these two movies on the same level. I believe the fun had with Deadpool and Wolverine is intentional. It wants you to have a good time. And while that aspect alone may not be enough for it to be a good movie, I still see it as a positive. So the film being fun isn't enough for it to be a good movie, but does it have other qualities that could make it one? Well, let's break it down to see if that's the case. Starting with the weakest aspect of the film, we have the story, the narrative, whatever you want to call it. The point is that it's not amazing. One of my main takeaways when walking out of the theater was that while I enjoyed the movie, I felt the plot was a little messy, that it lost itself at points, and I still hold that position. The movie doesn't necessarily forget where it's going, as the protagonist's goal is constantly stated throughout. Rather, it feels like progress gets halted sometimes just to do something cool. I'm not saying the story should make a beeline to the conclusion. That would make it feel rushed, and nobody wants that. That said though, if our protagonists are continuously getting sidetracked, it can make a movie feel aimless. The void itself acts as a sidetrack. Our heroes have to get out of it to get back to pursuing the main goal. Within this sidetrack though, they are sidetracked several more times. The main two fight, get introduced to some legacy characters, get captured, escape, dick around for a bit before finding a ride, the main two fight again, get introduced to some more legacy characters, fight an obstacle to get back to the main goal, then once they're back on track to pursuing the main goal, they have to fight another obstacle to get to it. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy these moments, quite the opposite actually, and I understand the narrative purpose these moments serve to help push the characters forward. However, given the repetitive structure of this sequence, I can't help but feel like if one or two of these moments was perhaps tweaked or removed, things might have flowed a bit better. That all said, I don't think the narrative is a lost cause or anything like that. I still believe the main message is clear throughout, that being one of self-acceptance and that you are more than your failures. This is shown through the characters well enough that I find myself caring about them. Kind of. The characters of Deadpool and Wolverine are probably the highlight, as is the case with most of these event movies. A character we haven't seen in about a decade or more shows up, and white people start losing their damn minds in a public space. What's up? I'm Glub Shido. These moments are cool, but ultimately they don't factor into why I like these characters, rather it's what they actually do with them. Of course, before we talk about all of these unlockable characters, we should probably talk about the main two, the ones in the title. The chemistry between these two arguably carries the film, and it also goes to show that Deadpool works a lot better when paired with someone who can barely tolerate him. Between the two of them, Wade is very clearly the main character. He does get top billing after all, but it's also just obvious when watching the film. We have a very clear understanding of Wade's motivation. Given that we've spent 2 movies already with his world, we'd understand why he wants to save it. We also know that this is how he's going to deal with his personal shortcomings, that being how he doesn't feel like he's good enough, that he doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Wolverine is not handled quite as well. While Wade is trying to prevent the loss of people he cares about, Logan is trying to make up for the loss of people he cares about. He wasn't there for those when they needed him, and that's his personal failure. That's what made him give up on himself. The thing is, though, this is presented in the exact opposite of show don't tell. The movie's second antagonist makes Logan spell it out to the audience as to why he feels the way he does. She just makes him retell the events, and it comes across as half-assed. I understand why they'd use her for this scene, as she wants to bring Logan down to her level, having him just believe that he is his own shortcomings. And while having a character state what happened is already pretty lame, they have him do this multiple times throughout. If I had to imagine why they went about it this way, it's because 1, they didn't want to have to shoot more scenes, likely involving more actors, and 2, they just assumed we'd be okay with whatever they did with Logan because it's Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Because of it kind of feeling tacked on, I could totally understand why someone wouldn't really care for this Wolverine. That said, I still liked this version if I'm being honest. The performance by Hugh Jackman paired with the role he serves in the movie makes him a worthwhile component for me. I can see what they're going for, and it does get the job done, however I do wish it was handled with a little more grace. As a unit, the two main characters work well in driving the film forward. While there are aspects I wish were executed differently, I still found myself invested in their story, and I definitely wouldn't mind seeing them appear together again. As for antagonists of the film, I'm a bit mixed. Paradox is a really entertaining villain, as he claims ridding Deadpool's world is a way of being more efficient, but he also makes it very clear that he really couldn't care less about what would be lost with its destruction. He's very clearly in the wrong, and the movie doesn't even make an attempt to make you think differently, rather it almost doubles down on just how wrong he is. I give him a thumbs up in existing, as he's a pretty good antagonist for a character like Deadpool. As for Cassandra, I'm not so sure how I feel. I can say like all of the other performances, Emma Corrin was great and I have no complaints about them in the role, other than maybe that Cassandra is supposed to look like a raisin. Then again, Cassandra is supposed to be a lot of things, yet this movie doesn't seem too interested in any of that. My main issue with Cassandra Nova in this movie is that I just don't think this was the right movie for them. They are a character tied to Xavier along with the rest of the X-Men, which makes them a bit of an odd choice for a Deadpool movie if you ask me. It's still a blast to watch them be evil, but I know there was a lot more that could have been done with her than what they were able to do within the runtime. What we're left with is a villain who I imagine most audiences will just see as Professor X's evil twin that was unfairly banished, and I can't help but find that a little underwhelming. As for everyone else in this movie, I think most of the characters chosen to appear work really well. Most of them being from series that ended on a rough note or never even got to start in the first place works to its benefit. The way I see it, these characters, to at least some extent, help echo the main message of the movie. Non-MCU Marvel movies had their downsides for sure, but that doesn't mean they deserve to be given up on. I'm just glad that other than my main man Johnny, rest in peace, the characters weren't played off as complete jokes. They were still comedic of course, but they were also given real moments worthy of fanfare. I understand why to many fans they were the true highlight of the film, and while I certainly enjoyed their time on the screen, they didn't necessarily make the movie for me. The last thing I have to say about the characters is that I'm a little bummed that the cast from the previous films were barely used. The only one who really gets to do anything is Peter, and while that is funny, I just can't help but feel like something is missing. Colossus gets one line, and it's him stating the name of a TV show. Vanessa has some vital moments for sure to help Wade's character arc, but that's really the full extent they use her for. I didn't need them to play a major role in the main plot of the movie, but just a little more from them would have been nice. Alright, as for other aspects of the movie is a little visually bland compared to past Deadpool movies. I get that a good chunk of the movie takes place in the Void, which is basically a giant desert, but that didn't stop Loki from making their Void look super cool and moody, and I want to know where that went. Some may jump to CG being the main problem, but to me, CG didn't even feel that egregious in this one. Truthfully, I didn't even know most of it was present, and from the behind the scenes they've been releasing, an impressive amount of stuff was actually done practically. It's a little hard to appreciate in the film itself, but I still like the effort. As is the case with Deadpool, most of the jokes tend to be hit or miss. Personally, I found most of the needle drops to be funnier than a good chunk of the jokes, but that's not to say there weren't a few scenes that got a good laugh out of me. At the end of the day, if you found the first two to be funny, then you'll likely find this one to be funny as well. That's probably what I could say for this movie as a whole. If you enjoy the first two, there's a good chance you'd like this one. I know it's not a guarantee, as I've seen plenty who didn't like this one but enjoy the other two just fine, and that itself is fine. I think it goes without saying that your opinion on a piece of media is as valid as anyone else's. My opinion on Deadpool and Wolverine is that its positive aspects outweigh the negatives. Given how much I've harped on negative or bad aspects of the movie, you might be surprised to hear that I think it's a good movie. The fun I mentioned at the beginning of the video derives from moments that I feel earned it well enough for me to be more favorable towards the film. There's a lot that I wish it handled differently, but when viewed as a complete package, I think the movie carries its weight to a solid 7 out of 10. The score is likely subject to change as I revisit the movie in time, but for now, that's probably all I have to say about Deadpool and Wolverine. I apologize for not getting this video out sooner, as I'm sure the main hype train for Deadpool and Wolverine has died down a bit by now, but I still feel like throwing my 2 cents into the ring. If you enjoyed the video, may I suggest you hit the like button, and if you want to hear me talk about more movies, video games, cartoons, whatever it may be, then maybe hit the subscribe button while you're at it. If you disagreed with me, agreed with me, whatever it may be, and feel like talking about it in the comments, please do. I am all open for discussion about this stuff, as it is my favorite pastime, just talking about this stuff. With all of that said, I will see you all in the next upload, and until then, have a good one.